Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this month's meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board. I ask for your guidance as we get things in place, and then we'll get going. So we're starting with a roll call. When I call your name of the board members that are present, please say here. Jeffrey Coburn.
Here.
Candace Strobe White.
Here.
Marissa Neal. Carly Bell.
Here.
Sajad Jamil. Carly Berthelot.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, introductions this morning.
Thank you very much, Chairman Vogel.
Oh, wrong guy.
Sullivan, wow.
That's better, right?
Okay, so this morning I am pleased to introduce some changes in our air monitoring program. Brian Ehlers, who previously served as a quality control tech in our air monitoring program, has been promoted to quality control tech 2, following Laura Wilson's move from that section to our new air monitoring chemist position. Jesse Mobrogi, formerly a compliance officer with our community compliance program, has now taken a position as a quality control tech in the air monitoring program. These are great advancements for our staff as well as our programs. The now vacant community compliance officer position, which is covered under the AFSCME Master Collective Bargaining Agreement, is currently up for internal bid. If there are no internal bids, it will be posted publicly on Metro's website.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Looking forward for the great work.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to public recognitions.
This morning, we are recognizing Art Williams, former director of the Air Pollution Control District, who passed away in late October. As dedicated public servant, Art focused on protecting and improving the environment through his work with the White House on the Local Government Energy Policy Advisory Committee, the Kentucky Environmental Protection Cabinet, and the district, where he led the development of the nationally recognized Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program, achieving significant reductions in air toxics and setting a model for the nation. At this point, I'd like to ask Art's wife, Noelle Roop, and Chairman Sullivan to join us.
It is a great honor for District Williams with the proclamation from the mayor, the city of Louisville. I'm going to take a moment to read it. Whereas Art Williams, a dedicated environmental advocate, devoted his life to uniting diverse groups in pursuit of protecting both people and the environment, and whereas his leadership of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District advocacy for inclusive policymaking led to groundbreaking protections for both public and natural resources. And whereas Art Williams' tireless efforts ensured underserved communities had a voice in environmental decisions, leaving a lasting legacy of equity, collaboration, and stewardship. Now, therefore, the city of Louisville honors Art Williams for his transformative impact on environmental protection and community impact.
Thank you so much. I do have a few more things to share. We're joined this morning in person by many of the people, Michelle, Randy, Shannon, Narita, Chris, and Lynn.
Byron.
I wasn't here at the same time.
Okay.
I had the privilege of cleaning up his file.
These folks are actually hired by Art. What we all are really a living legacy of Art's really transformative view of what we can do when we work together. And I do want to note, the work that we do with STAR is a do, it's not a did. It's something that those of us who remain here today understand the privilege of what we have to work with us along the program. Most importantly, as I still believe the only local program to implement air toxics beyond the federal program. we are often asked by states to share how an agency like ours can do that. Because they recognize they need to do that so people in their community breathe better. And that our environment is actually able to be improved while still having robust economic development. Those of us here at the district will carry on that legacy through implementing the program we have today. Others who recently joined us will help in continuing Art's work of reminding us that as air pollution professionals, we need good data. We need to share it with stakeholders. We need to listen and listen more. And then we need to act. With those things in mind, that's what we're carrying forward. I often share a poem that's been attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson about success. It has a beautiful line at the end that says, to know even one life is free and easy for you to live. That's a success. And it's so directly attributable to the work that we do. You can't miss that. That's not really a poem that has defined the success. It was written by a woman named Bessie Stanley in 1904. I think her original words really describe our well. What is success? He has achieved success who has lived well, laughed often and much, who has enjoyed the trust of pure women, the respect of intelligent men, and the love of little children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who has never lacked appreciation of its beauty or failed to express it, who has left the world better than he found it, whether through copy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul, who has always looked the best in others and given them the best in friend, whose life is an inspiration, whose memory is an affliction. We can do tremendous things. And art has showed us that's possible. You all for supporting art. I know a little bit of what it takes to do work like this. And I understand what you all do in order. Thank you. And with that, if you all would like to stay for the rest of the meeting and talk about pollution again, we're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, please.
Moving on to approval of minutes. Again, that was very nice and what was everything. The meeting, the minutes of the public meeting and regular meeting held on December 18th of 2024 were distributed electronically. Are there any comments or corrections from board members on those meeting minutes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, those meeting minutes are approved. Public comments. Ms. Thorne. Anybody ready to make a comment this morning? Okay. How about any written comments this morning? No. Are there members of the public in the edit room that wish to make a comment? If so, please step to the podium and give us your name and comment. No takers? Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief statement on this video teleconference? If so, please raise your hand and you will be called upon. This is a feature you can find on the participants list. If you're calling or on the phone by pressing *3, and you'll be called upon. Ms. Thorne. Thank you.
Chairman Sullivan, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Our video here in the edit room appears to be frozen. Does not appear
Okay.
frozen online. I'm not sure if anything can help us.
Will someone move?
Yeah,
it's
Rachel's
frozen.
podium.
I can remote in and see.
It's still going.
It's-
So we can move on,
It's
or?
working online. Juan?
Juan?
Is it working online?
It is working online, yes.
Okay, so then we'll not repeat and we will move on. Unfinished business, I don't believe there is any unfinished business, and likewise, there is no new business. In regards to committee reports, there have been no committees that met, but Ms. Robbins is working on regulatory updates, I think on quite a few regs, which means there will be some committee meetings of both committees in the not too distant future. Fair warning, committee members. Which brings us to staff reports, Director Hamilton.
Thank you. Those regulations that Ms. Robbins is working on include regulation 1.15, 5.02, and 7.02. Those are our federal regulations that we incorporate by reference here in Kentucky. When the federal national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants on NESHAPs, or the new source performance standards or NSPSs that are included in regs 502 and 702 are updated federally. They don't automatically update here in Louisville. So we need to incorporate a new version of 40 CFR, new regulation 1.15. Shouldn't be anything controversial about this, but it will be a good time for us to be able to talk about those programs and how they regulate air pollution within our larger stationary source regulatory framework. So we will likely go ahead in March and have a presentation on what are these new source performance standards, what are these NESHAPs, these national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants, and what do they do, and how do we use them to control pollution. In February, because this is January, we will present our year in review to the board. It has been an incredibly busy year. There is a lot of work going on. And it looks like 2025 is going to be a very busy year as well. We are already underway with preparations for our fiscal year 26 budget. Those preparations are metro-wide. Starting this month, our Office of Management and Budget will begin working with the agencies to develop our budgets after understanding our priorities. So we look forward to that work. There'll be a comprehensive budget will be adopted for metro government in late spring. We are a little differently funded than many of our metro peers. We get a small portion from the general fund. We also receive operational funding from USCPA in the form of a Section 105 of the Clean Air Act grant.
You submit a budget to EPA as
We
well?
submit a budget for the grant that we receive for that operational grant under Section 105 of the Clean Air Act and our Section 103 particulate matter grant funding. And then anytime we receive a grant from EPA.
But is it a routine matter that every year concurrent with the city's budget request, you make it to the feds?
We're on different budget years.
Okay.
So they're on the federal budget. We're on the
Okay,
fiscal June to
yeah, June and October.
July, they're October. Our funding from USCPA, goes through the federal budget process. And then there is a allocation formula that they publish periodically that says, when we get this pilot money from Congress, here's how we'll divvy it up. Sometimes there's a little bit left over and we'll get an extra allocation. We'll hope for that.
Okay.
We'll hope candidly that spit in the wind. We'll hope that Congress will actually provide additional funding for us. There have been some assessments that say on balance, the federal funding that we receive under Section 105 is correcting for inflation, about the same amount we got in 1994. So our costs continue to go up. Additional funding from EPA would be welcome. We continue to work to finalize our hiring of our assistant director position. We look forward to hopefully bringing you a new candidate person. Any questions about that?
Not for me.
Earlier this week, a team from US EPA arrived to conduct a technical systems audit, because we're all full of acronyms. We call these TSAs. This includes an on-site review and inspection of the monitoring organization's ambient air monitoring program to assess its compliance with established regulations covering the collection, analysis, validation, and reporting of ambient air quality data. We generate about 50 million data points a year. That's a lot to review, but it's important work because it assures US EPA that they have good quality data on which to make national decisions. And that area to area, our data is comparable. If you're bored or can't sleep, there actually is a technical systems manual. It's almost 200 pages long about how you conduct those types of reviews. This isn't the only review that any of our programs receive for air monitoring. The Kentucky Division for Air Quality comes on a quarterly basis, and they audit our air monitoring operations in the field. US EPA comes in periodically with equipment. They actually have a large truck that they come in and challenge the instrumentation that we run in the field so that they're able to see. They bring in a standard, and they run that standard through our equipment. Is that data we're generating that day good data? The state does something very similar. Our folks in EPA are in the field today. Our air monitoring staff and other field staff here at APCD work when it's cold, hot, wet, snowy, steamy, and today is no exception. Earlier in the week, if you follow us on social media, you may have seen a post that Matt Mudd made from Tom Love's work, going out to make sure that our shelters were accessible. The inside of the shelter, where our analyzers are, is climate controlled. So clearing walkways, clearing steps. But the inlets for the instrumentation are on the roof of a shelter to access via a ladder. So Tom went through and cleared off ice and snow from walkways and also from the instrumentation and the roof and access for the shelters. So my thanks to the air monitoring staff for their work in preparing for this review. This review was actually supposed to have happened in early December. So they began collecting data and pulling together documentation back in November, and also to EPA for their work here this week.
So on that line of the actual storage units that has the equipment, climate control, have backup generators?
They do not. But we don't have to have 100% data collection. Each of the different types of criteria pollutants has a variety of required minimum data collection. So in some cases, maybe 75% data collection in order to demonstrate compliance. And that takes into account times when our shelters may have lost power, or may have lost their Wi-Fi signal to send data back to us. These instruments are very sophisticated.
They subject to freezing?
If our shelter. Yes or no. Depends on which part you're looking at. Portions of them are. Data has to be collected under certain specific conditions. That's why the shelter is climate controlled. Doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold. But there are also times when, to be sure that the equipment is, that the data that the equipment has collected is good, valid data, we have to take instrumentation offline.
You ever have to, I'm concerned about the equipment itself, you know, the piece freezes, is it damaged?
We don't deal much with, we don't have any problems with freezing on the outside of the shelters. Everything's rain guarded, protected within electrical conduit, all of our tubing and everything like that. So nothing's been clogged by ice or anything like that. The extent of problems we've seen with ice this last week has just been latches frozen shut and stuff like that, locks that you don't know.
What I really meant though, if power goes out, the inside of the containment gets.
Yeah, we've been lucky as far as power the last 2 weeks. That is one of the issues with storms and stuff that we see most often at these sites. But
Okay.
And along that line, when we see episodes like that, it's not just that we have a blank space in our data collection. It's that there is a record that shows what happened, that the data itself is entered into US EPA's air quality system, and it has an appropriate flag that says either this equipment was offline because it was undergoing repair or evaluation, or this equipment was offline due to loss of power, any number. How many data flags are there?
At least 10.
Okay. So choosing the right one has regulatory significance. It's a very comprehensive.
What is the acceptable variation between the EPA standard and what our equipment reads? So like 1% or higher, lower?
I believe it's 10% for most points. And then at some of the lower points they measured in a PPP basis, so it'll be like 1.5 or 2 PPP.
Okay, thank you.
Let me bring my question back around to what I'm asking. If the equipment, the instrumentation freezes, does it affect the equipment itself to where it's destroys it or causes repair? And
Not particularly. I don't think we've dealt in the summer with the opposite problem of climate control failing and us reaching over 100 degrees in the shelter. But as far as the actual boxes and the analyzers, the boxes that house the analyzers are all inside. We've never dealt with low enough temperatures in the shelter to see any problems there. And then we have a series of checks that we can run when power does fail, that they bracket, we know it's good up until the point, and then when we bring it back online, we run it through the paces, we run the checks to verify it's working fine.
I'm sorry that we're frozen here, otherwise I'd ask.
kind of like that, they're frozen.
With that in mind, though, this is just a very bad way to describe what's in the shelter. If you looked in the server closet before, you'll see a rack of computers that are there. That's what the inside of our shelters look like. There are computer-based analyzers that are there. The instrumentation on the outside sucks in an air sample. Sometimes there are heaters or other desiccants, other instrumentation they run through before they hit that analyzer. But what's on the outside, we'll bring pictures in our report next one. We'll be sure when we get to air monitoring that we have Billy talk about, here's the inside of that shelter. And then here's the instrumentation on the top. The things that are out on the top, they're not the expensive parts. They're subject to wind.
Well, again, I'm just reminiscing of ice storms where we were out of power for a week. And if these instruments are sensitive, which they likely are, they get damaged.
We've been lucky this week, as far as looking back, I think it was the 2008 ice storm. Don't know exactly what was happening then. And as she said, everything's located inside now, so it's well.
Okay.
And to Brian's point, we know when the data was good. We know when we're bringing that equipment back up. And it's not like we just flip a switch and hope for the best. When that power goes off and we have to bring equipment back up, there is a tremendous amount of quality assurance work that goes in to be sure whatever is coming back up comes back and then produces good quality data.
And then I think sometimes you replace whole units or components. Some of these are expensive enough. You just,
Or they sponsor replacing equipment.
they don't let me near them. It's how expensive they are.
All right. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to.
Okay, please do.
All right. So talk a little bit about the National Ambient Air Quality Standards for criteria pollutants. I've said before, the Clean Air Act is a continuous improvement program where EPA is required every couple of years, 5 or sometimes more, to go back and review those national ambient air quality standards to be sure that they remain protected of human health and the environment. The primary particulate matter standard, U2.5, was strengthened in February of 2024. You may remember we went from 12 micrograms per cubic meter to 9. That's the first step in strengthening that new national ambient air quality standard. The second step is coming up in February. And that's where states will make an initial recommendation for an area's attainment status. For Kentucky, our recommendation is going to be an attainment based on our 2022-2024 design set. In Indiana, which Clark and Floyd County are part of our metropolitan statistical area, their Jeffersonville monitor is actually setting our design value. It is showing above the new 9 microgram per cubic meter standard, even when they take their 2024 data into account. And as a result, they are going to submit an exceptional event demonstration. This will be one of many across the eastern seaboard from those 2023 Canadian wildfires. The next step will be in February of 2026, when EPA makes final designations. Might want to put a little asterisk there. EPA does have the ability to give themselves a 1-year extension. I think we're all waiting to see how many exceptional event demonstrations they receive for particulate matter. Our understanding is that it may be quite a substantial number. There are actually 2 national ambient air quality standards for each of those criteria pollutants. The primary standard, I just talked about for particulate matter, is designed to protect quality. Secondary standard is designed to protect the environment, plants and animals. Late last month, EPA finalized its review of the secondary standards for the national ambient air quality standards for nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter. It left the standards for nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter unchanged. In EPA's words, they retained those standards, but it strengthened the standard for sulfur dioxide from a 3-hour 0.5 parts per million average to an annual 10 parts per billion average. Based on a quick review, it looks like we'll be in attainment with this new standard. We will keep the board advised as we approach the designation's recommendation with this newly strengthened standard at the end of this year.
But we're generally on track to meet.
I believe so. In the midst of the TSA, folks have been busily working to be sure that we're all ready. Brian Paris took a few minutes to do a little bit of analysis for us, and it shows that we are well below that 10 ppb standard. Unlike particulate matter, which may be directly emitted, say for example from a smokestack, combustion product, we can all gather that it's also formed as a secondary formation from a lot of chemicals. Unlike particulate matter, ozone is formed in the atmosphere when volatile organic compounds and nitrogen dioxide combine in the presence of sunlight. That usually means we're making ozone here in the summer to form a new pollutant called ozone. Ozone has historically been and continues to be a challenge for our area. You may remember back in 2022, we submitted a request for redesignation to US EPA. EPA redesignated the Clark and Floyd counties in our metropolitan statistical area on the same data that we submitted. But by the time that US EPA Region 4 was ready to act on our submittal, unlike Region 5 in Indiana, we were seeing impacts of ozone from the 2023 Canadian wildfires. Yesterday, US EPA demonstrated its EMBER tool, that is the expedited modeling of burn events results, 2023 Canadian wildfires, that it has recently developed to help evaluate ozone-related impacts. Nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds are emitted from fires. They make ozone. They transmit that directly. They also transmit additional NOx loading. Our area is particularly sensitive to those nitrogen oxides. EPA's tool is a screening level tool. They rolled it out on December 13th in the webinar yesterday. They made it clear that they had to make some assumptions and that it should be considered qualitatively, not quantitatively. For example, they have estimated the burden of fire-related chemicals using a tool. They have another model to assist them in making that estimate. But they will actually submit a final more QA/QC number and complete the 2023 national emissions inventory. I think may be ready sometime around 2026. So at this point, it's good. It has some great capabilities. It looks like it will be a very useful screening tool. It will assist folks in making a quick decision about what impacts may have occurred in the area. It's not the final word. Consultant, APCD, and our peers across the country are all now evaluating this tool and they'll provide, feedback to each other as well as to you. They don't intend to keep this model up. Instead, what they've done is build a framework that would allow an agency or hopefully one of our multi-jurisdictional organizations. We have these folks who help us with our work may be able to keep that tool updated so that we are all able to use it quickly in the future. At this point in time, US EPA has proposed as of January 3rd to deny our request for redesignation. And this is a technical decision on their part. Its time to act has expired, and so it is open for public comment on EPA's docket. Matt's going to put a link to where you can see that in our chat. At this point, we know in our area, we have work underway on our exceptional events that will help us understand what our true design value is by removing some of the impacts from those Canadian wildfires. However, in 2024, we saw some additional exceedances of the ozone standard. And as a result, we're going to have to bring the area into attainment for EPA to act again on our request for redesignation. So good work already underway here. Elk Creek Unit 1 has been taken out of service as of December 31st. In 2027, they'll complete construction of their natural gas combined cycle turbine. Take Unit 2 out. Those are large NOx contributors here. I think our estimate is about
What was the date of that Unit 2?
2027. So right now, those two units together generate about 4,000 tons of nitrogen oxides. So we're already seeing the benefit of Unit 1 coming down for this year. American Synthetic Rubber Company is also converting their coal boiler house to natural gas. It's a much smaller unit, but we'll take those reductions. And those two will come online 2026, 27 timeframe. The Clean Air Act does provide prescriptive requirements for us. Where we are right now is moderate non-attainment. It is possible that EPA could bump us up to a different level of non-attainment. We're working with our EPA peers to understand that, particularly as the new administration comes in. But most importantly, we're working with our EPA colleagues to understand what work we'll need to submit wherever we are with our attainment designation to be sure that we bring the area into attainment. First step for us, though, is that exceptional demonstration. So with that, we'll be bringing more work to the board once we have a clear time frame for when that work will start. We'll share that with you. like Lauren Robbins and Vaughn, as well as several others on the team that came, who's helping us with a lot of the work necessary, and understanding how the Clean Air Act drives the work forward. Any questions?
I have a question. So in regards to the demonstration yesterday, did they present any of the qualitative results relative to
Yes.
our area specifically?
Yes.
Okay, and they would be,
So it was a quick showing, and in fact, what they did was show it nationally first. And so it did
everybody across the country was on this
about
webinar?
200 people.
Okay,
Yeah, so, they demonstrated the tool kind of from a static standpoint. The PowerPoint from yesterday's call is now on EPA's website, or should be shortly. So you can see how that tool works. And then, excuse me, they did use some raw data from Louisville to show in live action. Here's how you go to the tool. Here's how you find the right data set. Here's how you then, bless their hearts, access necessary maps and graphs that show impact. And that's been one of the challenges with respect to exceptional events has been that EPA produces a daily map, fire and smoke impacts across the country. They don't archive that. So we've been having a daily archiving of those maps so that we have that data and don't have to seek it from EPA if we're going to do an exceptional event demonstration. These maps are truly helpful that EPA has produced. And again, they're qualitative. Our consultant may go beyond that, but they are really nice. They don't align with the data, and we actually have to go in and capture them in a different way. They showed us that. They showed us what the tool graphs per area is the observed ozone concentration, the model predicted ozone concentration, and then the model predicted contribution due to the fire.
were those significant contributions?
There are days where we have significant contribution. And again, it's a screening tool.
Sure.
They're modeling this on a larger grid than they typically do. So when you have a big picture view, sometimes we can miss finite details.
Okay.
That's places where other models have been developed, the GAN model, for example, and other research, as well as just things like simple similar day comparisons. For example, we look back several years at, let's say, May 31st. And under this weather condition and this temperature, cloud cover, we did not make ozone. And on a day where we had fire and smoke impacts, if we made ozone and yet there were similarities, we're able to say, we made ozone here this day, but we didn't make it any of these other years. There'll be a lot of that kind of work in that exceptional event demonstration.
Okay. Any other questions, board members? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay. All right, moving on to the air quality reports and enforcement status reports were all distributed electronically. Any questions on those from board members?
No.
I have one. And I apologize for really, this is probably the same report that's out there all the time. So on the environmental status summary report, just as a matter of update, it has things like, for example, from 2022, control of open burning, it's Amanda Morris. And then it comes down and has litigation related to Amanda Morris. Is that the same event? And it's really $200 and it's been litigated?
Enforcing that penalty assessment.
So, Juan, can you describe?
Yeah, a
It's,
little background. Thank you.
Sure. So once an NOV is issued, and, it's been assessed to the violator. And the violation hasn't been collected or paid by the violator. Then it goes through a collections process.
Okay.
Ultimately, it will end up in Jefferson District Court for a criminal complaint issued against the violator in order to enforce that penalty. So the two litigation against Amanda Morris and Shannon Payton for open burn, or just simple criminal complaints that have been issued in Jefferson District Court in order to collect on those penalties that have been assessed.
You expend significant funds pursuing 205. Just out of curiosity.
It's a simple filing of a complaint,
Okay.
and then it gets served. And once that process gets going, then hopefully the violator appears in court to have that penalty assessed.
All right. Thank you.
Steve, as we work through open burns, the compliance officers go out, and the first step on an open burn is to educate the person and
Sure.
make sure that they understand what's allowed and what's not. Our goal is compliance. If there's additional issues, we might send a warning letter. Rare occasions, we do enforcement, and then even more rare, if it's somebody who does not respond to the NOV and continues to burn, our goal is compliance, and the neighborhood continues to complain about somebody, it forces our hand to take them to court over it. It's not a great use of district resources, but that is the only remedy to return somebody to compliance.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, it just brings up the notion of what happens during this process, like, someone owes you money and you keep asking, and they keep making excuses. Is it
Oftentimes, I'll see if they're not responding.
possibly?
Yeah.
Not, you mean they don't return phone calls and
Don't respond to the notice of violation, don't return phone calls or communications, and then we have to file in court, and then they have to be served.
I see, but if, well, never.
They don't continue to burn.
So
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
yeah, there is that issue, but with respect to, these
I got-
small penalties.
I got to make a comment here. If I own a rental property in another state and one of my tenants does something, on the first violation, the city gives me a bill. Second violation, the bill goes up significantly. And the third violation, it goes up more than that. How about we change the approach and not waste the time and just go that route? You get people's attention faster.
So sometimes we've made every attempt to get people's attention. Please let me assure you of that, both from starting with a warning letter, or starting with education, going to a warning letter, much like your example here of escalating to the point of issuing them a penalty. But if they continue to burn, or if they are unresponsive, this has been our mechanism for getting their attention. We don't have the capability of placing a lien on someone's property. My guess is, Mr. Bertolon, is that the city will place a lien on your rental property. That's not a tool in our toolbox. For those people who may have a penalty assessed, who can't afford to pay a penalty, we have a process for making a showing that says, I can't afford it.
Mhm.
We're willing to work with folks, but we have to be able to talk with them, and they need to respond to us.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, the point I just want to make is that if it's an ongoing situation and you have violation 1, violation 2, violation 3, that the fine gets an automatic and known escalation. And that also becomes a bit of a deterrent for people to be repeat offenders.
Yes, thank you. Our penalty policy does take into account that history of non-compliance. So yes, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, as a reminder to the board in regards to the reports themselves, last month, we were directed to make comments on things that we'd like to see different or the presentation of that information. So just as a reminder, please look at those and provide comments to district staff in regards to changes on those. Are these the same reports that go out to the public? Right, okay. So I would keep that in mind as well as you look through those. Okay, again, if you haven't signed in and you wish to do so, please do. So we have a record of who comes. And if there's nothing else to be said, no questions to be asked, we will adjourn this meeting. The next board meeting is Wednesday, February 19th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Comment.